October is Fire Prevention Month. It's a time when fire departments, large and small, do some outreach to educate young people, young and old really, about the seriousness of fires and what steps to take to prevent a tragedy. Fairhaven Firefighter Wayne Oliveira is a semi-regular on this program, and he discusses fire safety with us. It's good to have you on again, Wayne.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Wayne, what does the Fairhaven Fire Department do in regards to fire prevention in the community this month? And I know it goes beyond October, but give me an idea about what fire prevention education steps you take as an overview.
And we've been doing fire prevention in Fairhaven for well over 20 to 30 years. But especially in the month of October, we concentrate on getting out to the schools, getting out to some of our daycare centers, and really doing a fun outreach with the kids. You know, this is a time where we can have some fun with them, but also get them to learn about fire safety, you know, and just have a really good mix of fun and education.
You do a lot of work with seniors, too. I know that you recently visited senior centers, kind of starting the month here, and you'll be doing some schools in November.
Right.
You know, some might say, gee, why are we doing this with seniors? They've heard this all before. Come on, if you're 60 or 70 years old, you kind of know the lay of the land. But you still keep in touch with those folks, right?
We do. The two groups that are probably most affected by fire tragedies are the very young and the very old. And, you know, although some of these folks have done this for years, it never hurts to give them that little reminder or maybe some safety tips that they've taken for granted that, you know, we can make a difference in their everyday lives. So we take part in, it's a senior safe program, which is instituted by the state of Massachusetts, or funded by them as well through a grant. So we do student education and also senior education. We visit the housing for the elderly, visit the senior center, and we just have, you know, any place that we can, you know, make contact with them and just have a casual talk, or, you know, maybe a little education program and remind them about some fire-safe ways that, you know, in their daily lives.
We're going to touch on some of those things. What is the SAFE program, Wayne?
That's the Student Awareness of Fire Education, and that was a program that the state instituted probably now, we're well into just over 20 years. It's a grant funded by the state legislature that allows funding to go to fire departments to be put particularly to have a fire educator, a firefighter in the schools, to visit them, to educate them, to tell them about fire safety. And we've participated in that for just about all of the years that this SAFE program has been out there.
What grades do you focus on?
We do mainly pre-K, or actually preschool, all the way up to grades 4 and 5. The middle school, we do some outreach there. We also take part in career days at the high school, but basically most of our time is spent in the elementary schools.
And this month, you know, in a community like Fairhaven, there's a focus on protecting your property, obviously, fire prevention in your property, in your home. What are the most important steps homeowners can take to protect their property from fire? I know that this may be quite a list, but talk to us about it.
Well, in general, you know, just as an overall general housekeeping, you know, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I'm not talking about dusting and vacuuming. I'm talking about just the way they generally store things around the house. You know, clutter or combustibles, you know, keeping away from heating system and vents, making sure that your vents outside are clear, especially during the snowy season, so that you don't get the carbon monoxide issue. Making sure, and I know we've talked about this, it's redundant, smoke detectors, smoke detector, smoke detector. We talk about them all the time, but we still see people who fail to either repair them when the batteries, you know, are bad, or replace them when they're broken. But those are your first line of defense. Those are the things that are going to warn you that you have a problem in your home. We had an incident just real quick the other day. Person's smoke detectors became disabled. They took them down. I'm sure they had plans of repairing them in the next few days. And as Murphy's Law would have it, fire struck on one of those evenings. the smoke detector in the basement was actually the first one to go off, and the fire was started on the second floor. So as you can imagine, the house is charged with smoke. None of those detectors were in place until it got to the basement. So, you know, you just have to, as soon as they break, as soon as the batteries are junk, get them replaced and get them back where they belong.
And while you're checking your fire alarms, you should also check your carbon monoxide alarm as well. Some of the manufacturers today are making dual machines, right? Fire
Absolutely.
and carbon. In my house, it's a little bit of an older house. We have fire and carbon monoxide alarms in the house. But you got to check those too. You got to check the batteries on those as well, right?
Right. And there's a rule of thumb. You know, some people feel that a dual system is good. Other people feel that an independent unit is good as well. So that way, if your carbon monoxide goes on the fritz, you still have your smoke detector. So, you know, there's kind of different thoughts on that. But carbon monoxide is something we didn't really consider years ago. It's a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas. There's no way you would even know it was in your presence unless you had a detector or you started to become sick. You started to feel the effects of carbon monoxide. So these things have become so inexpensive that, you know, no homeowner should be without them. And state law does require that you have smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors in your home. Unfortunately, the only time we can enforce that or check that is when you sell your home. We go there and we make sure they're in place. But, you know, God forbid you have a fire in your home, those things are going to be looked at by the insurance company. So, you know, it is a requirement. You should do it. And for your own family safety, you should be doing it. And, you know, keep the batteries in those functioning as well. And if they're plug-ins, just keep them clean and unobstructed.
And we had a terrible incident a couple of years ago, I believe, in a Cushnet.
Right.
We had lost 2 lives, I believe. It was terrible.
Right. And the thing with carbon monoxide is you don't just see usually one death, you see multiple deaths. And that's what happened in that case. I believe there was a father and son.
Right.
You know, very tragic incident. You don't know it's really affecting you until the effects of the carbon monoxide start to take you over. You become tired, sleepy, and in most cases you just go to sleep. But you don't have the time to really know that it's getting to you.
You're listening to Townsquare Sunday. I'm Jim Phillips. My guest is Fairhaven Firefighter Wayne Oliveira. We're talking fire prevention today. Speaking of that, fire prevention has a history. It didn't just start when fire departments started. There was some level of concern that was brought to bear here. We weren't thinking about this perhaps in the 1800s when fire departments they existed for sure in many a community, but we weren't thinking about prevention, at least not too hard about prevention.
Right.
Tell us about it.
You know, it's a cool little story. Fire Prevention Week was established after the Great Chicago Fire that took place in 1871. It was a large fire that killed 250 people, left 100,000 homeless, 17,400 structures burned, and more than 2,000 acres. It started on October 8th and went into October 9th, and that's why we celebrate Fire Prevention Week during the week of October 9th. They always make sure that the October 9th is sandwiched in there. According to legend, it broke out after Mrs. O'Malley's cow knocked over a lantern that was in the barn, although that was never really proven. But after that, the Chiefs Association and the Fire Marshals Association of North America got together, and it was in 1920 that President Woodrow Wilson issued the first National Fire Prevention Day proclamation. And since 1922, it's been observed every year that falls on October 9th, that week, and every president since President Wilson has signed a declaration making Fire Prevention Week.
You mean the present president? He's done that?
I would hope that he signed it.
I hope so, too. Is smoking the most prominent cause of house fires?
It's funny how, strange how that's
discarding of
cigarettes. Yeah, smoking has kind of moved up. At one time, it used to be cooking, and I always kind of joke with this with my audiences because when I'm doing the fire prevention, because I think what we've seen over the years is people just don't cook as much as they did. I know for myself, Sunday was a big meal. My mom would make Sunday dinner. you don't see that a lot. You don't see, 4 and 5 o'clock dinners. It's like takeout. So my joke is you can't burn takeout. So cooking kind of took a little bit of a drop, and smoking moved back up the ladder. So yeah, we're seeing discarded cigarettes as being one of the number one causes, and cooking, because we don't cook anymore, has kind of dropped.
Yeah, people got to be more careful. I'm going to tell, we don't smoke in my house, and my wife banned smoking in our house, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago. But that's kind of how it's always been. But in some houses, obviously,
yeah, and the
smokers, it's tough.
The thing about smoking is, something could drop in a couch, and it'll smolder for hours, and then break out at like 2 in the morning when you're all asleep. You're in your deep sleep. And some people say, well, I would wake up to the smell of the smoke. But the thing is, we talked about carbon monoxide. You actually go into a deeper sleep. So if you're smelling the smoke, you're also getting carbon monoxide, which is going to put you into a deeper sleep. You're not going to think rational. And that's how most of the fire fatalities happen.
Don't smoke in the house. That's the best answer I can give you. Wood and pellet stoves, right up there as well?
Yeah, not as much problems as we did years ago, but still, still a culprit as far as problems. Chimney fires, people who don't keep the flues and the chimneys clean from the creosote buildup. That's one of the biggest problems. Being unattended, lack of maintenance. All of those kind of going hand in hand. So if you're going to have the pellet stoves and the wood stoves and all of that good stuff, they are not maintenance free. They come with a certain amount of work that you have to do to maintain them. And, they're great. They're efficient. They work well, but you've got to keep on top of them. You've got to make sure you keep your chimneys clean.
Disturbing trend out there. In fact, it was in some of the material that you have on your website. You don't see it a lot, but there is a concern about young people fascinated by fire and setting fires. Is that something you see in Fairhaven?
It is. In the bigger communities more so, but also in Fairhaven being a smaller community, we still see that. Some of the kids are fascinated by that. We do have a junior fire setters program. We have an individual who takes care of that and meets with troubled individuals through the school system or through the court system if they're mandated. But there has been for years, and probably will continue to be, just a fascination with fire. For whatever reason, it does continue to be a problem out there.
It's a very tough thing.
Right. And, especially with some of the, the economics and the different family elements that go on. Some kids do it out of frustration or anger. There are a lot of different reasons for why people are fascinated with that.
Wayne, if there's one thing you could tell property owners and the owners of businesses and everything else about preventing fire, I bet it would be make sure your smoke alarm is working. That's
probably my number one, flag that I carry. I'm just a big advocate of the smoke detectors, just because I think they work so well. I'm confident that, and some of the people, if you've built a new house, you've got a smoke detector in almost every room. You've got them in the bedrooms, outside the bedrooms. You've got them in the cellar and everywhere. So, the average home now, instead of just having 3 or 4, might have up to 10. I just did an inspection of a house that had 12 detectors. So they're everywhere, but they work well. And as we talked about earlier, if you sleep with your door closed, you'll want the detector in the bedroom. And that's why we're putting them both in the bedroom and in the hallway, because a lot of people do sleep with their door closed.
And people, really, they are inexpensive. If you are putting in a unit, it's not like it's going to break the bank. If you got it hardwired in your house, that might be a little bit different expense. But the fact is, if you buy an alarm and you can put it up, and it's really not that expensive in a proposition.
Right. The whole smoke detector thing is such an inexpensive proposition. When you think of the savings of destruction in your home should a fire occur. So the cost of doing that far outweighs the amount of damage that you could have. Some people have them monitored. We have monitoring systems that call. So as soon as the detectors go off there, they're letting us know.
All right. Our thanks to Fairhaven Firefighter Wayne Oliveira for speaking with us today during Fire Prevention Month. Always important stuff. Wayne, thanks.
Okay, thank you, and thanks to WBSM for always being a partner.
Townsquare Sunday returns in just one moment. Don't go away.